I, 28, and my husband, 29, have been married for 5 years. My husband was a nurse until he told me that he wanted to become a doctor. I was fully supportive, and he is now in his first year of medical school. I've been supporting the both of us as he can't work while in school, but recently found out our rent was being raised by $500 at the end of our contract in April. This was honestly the last straw as it pushed us past where we were financially comfortable, so I raised the idea of us buying a home. This had been in conversation for years, but my husband had always said that we could after he paid off his school debt from nursing, which was paid off early in 2020. I asked my mother, a real estate agent, who told me that with what we would be paying, it would be better for the money to go towards mortgage repayments and not rent. I brought all of this up to my husband, who shut it down almost immediately. He told me our agreement was to wait until he had paid off all of his debt. I told him that was for nursing and that he was in school for 6 years, which was hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt, and some doctors don't pay off their debt until 20 plus years. I told him I had been supportive of this career change and by financially supporting the household, but it was the best financial decision for both of us, but also relieved the financial burden for me. I brought up the savings we had for our deposit and how we could afford something small and modest within the budget, but he told me it was in our best interest to use that money to pay off his loans. I asked him if he realized the financial burden this would put on me, but he said it was temporary and eventually he'd make more than me, so it would be even, and I agreed to this. My mother called and asked if we were going to look into buying a house, but I told her that we weren't and we'd be looking for somewhere cheaper to rent instead. She insisted we at least consider it because it made the most financial sense and asked if it was because we didn't have the down deposit. I told her that we were probably going to use that to pay off my husband's debt and he didn't want any more debt until he was debt free from his student loans. Days later, my mother and father came to lunch and told us that they had news. They offered to gift us the down deposit of a home. I was over the moon and shocked by the offer. Once they left, my husband exploded on me, claiming I emasculated him and made him look bad in front of my parents. I told him I never asked for this, but we should take it as it was a privilege most people don't get and would relieve so much financial burden on me. He refused to talk to me or my parents until we apologized for shaming and emasculating him, but I refused to. I apologized but told him that I wouldn't make my parents as they'd done nothing wrong. Am I the asshole for emasculating my husband and refusing to make my parents apologize for it? So there I am, on a date with a guy I've been seeing for about 3 weeks. All is going well and afterwards, we go back to his place. Fast forward and we're in the shower. He's a 7-in-1 shampoo, body wash, car oil, also functions as ketchup kind of guy. Surprisingly, he presents me this new soap someone had made him. Smells great, so there I go, washing my body, impressed that he actually has such nice soap. Within moments, my vagina is ablaze. Something is wrong. I remove myself from the shower as gracefully as I can while panicking. My kitty is swelling, becoming huge. Like lips aren't covering this anymore and it's just getting bigger and bigger. While he's still showering, I call my mother, I know, frantically. I'm explaining in great detail what's happening while panicking. I have seriously grown a small wiener at this point. I'm staying as quiet as possible while a show plays in the background. Little do I know, this dude has supersonic hearing and has heard my whole panicked, detailed conversation before walking in on me examining my incredibly swollen lady bits. He very calmly asks if I need to go to the hospital while I'm playing this as cool as a cucumber, explaining that I'm fine and everything's okay. This is where Morgan Freeman would come in and say she was not fine and everything was not okay. I proceed with the rest of the evening remaining as calm as possible, hoping this torture would end. Turns out I was allergic to the new soap and my most sensitive area was the only thing that had a reaction. Everything's fine now and it's all laughs, but man, did that make for a very uncomfortable evening. I was so mortified, I was fully prepared to leave the country. Story time about when I embarrassed myself during a job interview. I had a job interview with the CEO in person despite COVID. I was super nervous as per usual, maybe even more than usual because I really wanted this job. I tried to calm myself down, but by the time the interviewer showed up, I could literally feel my heartbeat in my throat. He was 50-ish and walked down the stairs towards me in his nice suit but stopped halfway down. I figured the interview would take place upstairs, so I got up to meet him. And as I was walking up the stairs towards him, he put his arm up and his elbow out. And my brain just sort of went, error. I suppose it could have only meant two things. It could have meant A, please take my arm, milady, so I can escort you to the room as if we're strolling down the promenade together. Or B, please give me an elbow bump since we can't shake hands. Which is really not an uncommon gesture at all in the Netherlands. So what do? Yes, I went with option A and I eagerly locked arms with a strange man that I had never met in my life before, as if saying, yes, good sir, let's go for that stroll. And then we just stood there, arm in arm, halfway up the stairs, sheepishly staring at each other. I wanted the earth to swallow me whole. I just didn't know what to do next and I don't think he'd fully understood what happened, so neither of us moved. When he finally gathered his senses, he said, I meant to give you an elbow bump, after which I quickly put as much distance between us as I could and mumbled, right, yes, that makes much more sense. Because it did, let's face it. And then we had the interview. I was so embarrassed for locking arms with him as if we were best friends forever. However, I still got the job. I'm a stay-at-home mom and my husband works full-time. We have 3 kids and one of them is 2 years old. My husband helps a lot with the kids. He's a committed dad but is absolutely against babysitters due to an awful incident with a babysitter that was the reason his younger male cousin James got disabled years ago. I don't go out much since I have to take the kids with me and not every place is suitable for kids. We received an invitation from our brothers, who has been my husband's best friend since college, wedding, which we later discovered was child-free. My brother lives states away, so the entire trip will take 4 days, as well as my brother's in-laws' weekend dinner party. I told my husband that I want to go since it's been a while since I went to a wedding, and this one is special, and suggested that we get a trusted friend as a babysitter. He asked if I was serious to consider leaving our 2-year-old with a babysitter, and suggested that I do what I normally do and stay home with the kids while he goes to the wedding. I refused and said I have as much right to attend as him since we were both invited. He said it wasn't his fault that my brother wants a child-free wedding, and I should do this for the kids and sacrifice for their sake. I still refused and said it was unfair, and since he's the parent too, then he should stay also for the kids. He looked at me and said, "That's my best friend's wedding you're asking me to skip for Christ's sake. Are you kidding me?" Then said I was being petty for suggesting this, and I was basically choosing to go to a party over keeping our kids safe. He asked me to consider this a business trip, what I would do. Go with him and leave the kids? I said I understand his paranoia of babysitters, but really, all my friends have sitters, and at times they're really needed. He said I ought to know better than what my friends tell me, and this wasn't even up for discussion. When I kept arguing, he called me selfish and said he won't let me ruin this relationship with his friend because I was being spiteful for not being able to attend, and that my brother will understand my situation. He keeps asking who's more important, a wedding party or my kids, and said I was being unreasonable for making my attendance a hill to die on. Am I the asshole for refusing to stay home with the kids while my husband attends my brother's wedding? I sustained very bad injuries to my face this month. I'm in the stage of healing when the scar tissue has formed, but it's still very tender new skin. I'm going to have very obvious facial scarring for the rest of my life. The injury starts about an inch above my hairline, goes down over my eyebrows, so on that part, hair will not grow. It continues down my cheek where it's the deepest. I'll probably always have an indentation in the fullest part of my cheek, then it continues to my jawline. In some ways, it's okay. I'm happy it's just cosmetic damage. My friends are super reassuring, telling me how badass and sick it's gonna look. They say I'm still hot as ever, now a little more sexy and mysterious. But in some ways, it really sucks. I know I'm always gonna be seen first as the girl with the scar, and it feels especially bad when people look at me differently. This week, I had to fly home for a family thing. It was a plan I made long before my injury. I wasn't really looking forward to the pity or people making a big deal of it. I'd rather it not be acknowledged. I'd also met with my dermatologist who said I was at the stage of the scar tissue formation that I no longer should be dressing the wounds. The skin was healing and instead I needed to be applying topical cream and Vaseline to keep the site clean and moist. It also looks a bit ugly. The building scar tissue is very red and tender, and with Vaseline over it, looks slick and shiny. So I get on this flight, I have the window seat and I put my headphones on and drift to sleep when the plane is still boarding. I wake up to this kid, maybe 4 years old, sat next to me, throwing a tantrum. I didn't catch the first part of it and I honestly couldn't understand what he was yelling about. His father said to me, "Can you cover that injury?" I said that my dermatologist recommends that I don't, so no, I don't think I will. He started snapping at me and saying, "There is no need to be so rude. That injury is graphic and it's scaring my little one." I said, "This is my face. The only damn face that I've got. It sucks being told I'm so ugly that I can't show my goddamn face in public." He started to backtrack saying, "Just until it's healed." And I said, "It'll always be with me. Maybe teach some fucking compassion and respect instead of telling a girl half your damn age what you think about her face. That's rude." He actually got up after and I think he went to the stewardess about a seat change because a young couple came and sat next to me a few minutes afterwards. I've got to admit, I felt so low that I put on my sunglasses and had a quiet cry for a few minutes. Am I the asshole for not covering up my healing scar and for being confrontational about it? Storytime about when I messed up by telling a woman on our first date that her pepper spray is useless. So a friend sets me up with this woman because she thought we have similar hobbies and similar dark humor. We met today for the first time over a coffee and tea. We were actually having a good time, or at least I thought so. We clicked right away and had a lot to talk and laugh about. After like an hour, she suggested to pay for our drinks and go somewhere else for lunch, and I happily agreed. As we were about to pay for our drinks, she started searching her purse for her wallet and put various objects on the counter because she seemed to have a bit of a mess in her purse. One of these objects was the pepper spray. I casually mentioned after leaving the coffee, "I'd consider getting a different pepper spray if you plan to defend yourself. This one is quite useless." For a bit of context, I used to test various pepper sprays and tear gas in the military. We were stupid and young, but it was also kind of thrilling. And the product she had was by far the weakest and worst we tested. I just recognized the bottle because it was so bad and I thought I should let her know that this is probably not the best option to go with. But she obviously didn't know about that because, well, we just met an hour ago. After this comment, our conversation kind of died and she suddenly had a work emergency that she had to go to. It took me a few minutes until I realized that my comment was beyond creepy without any context. I'm definitely not used to meeting new people. Hopefully I haven't traumatized her. My wife and I have been married for 18 years. We have our 16-year-old daughter who's been dating a slightly shy and awkward young man for about 3 to 4 months now. He seems very nervous around my daughter and has admitted in passing comments here and there to my wife and I that he can't believe she agreed to date him and that he thinks she's way out of his league. He seems very respectful, just shy. My wife is usually an independent, awesome woman and her ideals align closely with mine, particularly in terms of feminism and equality. We have both striven to raise our daughter to be as independent and capable as possible. Since my daughter has been dating this kid, my wife has changed considerably and has given our daughter advice that has left me with raised eyebrows more than once. Some of the advice that I've heard my wife give out is, "Oh, it's cute for boys to pay for everything, especially in your first relationship," or, "Oh honey, don't worry about that, he can pay for you, if he really liked you, he would," and similar. I've tried to balance this out by telling my daughter straight away, 2 people in a partnership should be contributing equally. And my personal favorite, if someone asks if they can take you out for dinner, it's reasonable to expect them to pay, but if someone asks you to grab dinner with them, it's reasonable to split the payment. I figured that would be an easy way for a young person to understand the difference. However, I've noticed my daughter becoming more and more entitled to her boyfriend's money. They haven't been anywhere obviously since we're home, but she talks about him like, oh, I'll just ask him to pay for X, which leaves a bad taste in my mouth. She also flippantly bragged and mentioned that she gets him to buy gift cards for her, etc. by mentioning her mother's advice. If you really liked me, you pay for X. I spoke to my wife privately and told her my concerns. She insists it's a rite of passage for girls and it's cute that she should feel this guy completely spoiling her. I told her it's not cute for her to be thinking that it's acceptable to view relationships as personal ATMs. And my wife became very angry with me and is now calling me an asshole with a lot of hostility. Am I the asshole for telling my wife it's not cute for her to encourage our teenage daughter to expect her boyfriend to pay for everything in their relationship? Yesterday, I was supposed to spend the night at my friend's house with some of my classmates and we were playing Truth or Dare. There really is no reason for us to choose truth since we already know a lot about each other, so we mostly just went with dares. It was pretty fun and we had some weird challenges. I was sitting next to my friend's brother when it was my turn and a classmate challenged me to kiss him. His sister immediately told my friend to change the dare and so she did. To be clear, her brother didn't say anything when he heard about the dare and just laughed, so he definitely looked like he was okay with it, right? Well, wrong, because after I kissed him, he told me what the fuck am I doing and he looked like he was really grossed out by it. I was honestly a bit offended and asked him why he was so grossed out by me kissing him. I'm actually a pretty okay looking girl, and even if I wasn't, there was no reason for him to act like this. He ended up leaving the game and my friend told me that what I did was wrong on so many levels and to get out of her house. My other classmates didn't say anything, so I think they were on my side, but they didn't want to participate in this argument. I'll ask them when they go back home. Anyway, I did end up leaving. Am I the asshole for kissing my friend's brother without his consent during a Truth or Dare?